good sense of self-confidence is something that is not very common among children of any age. We see some of them that over the board we have more kids that doubt themselves than we have kids that are confident.
That's because of this pervasive attitude that we have to make them all obedient in mind, over the fact that we need to teach them and respect them as human beings.
So we need to help them find their skills, their interests, and what they love, help them pursue them, be proud of them, and help them be adventuresome in doing that. And we'll have a whole different group of kids.
Yes, and they will go into life and be successful and not be afraid and be able to try new things. They will be thinkers, and when they make a mistake, they won't hold it against themselves and kick themselves as much. Instead, they're going to go, oh, well, you know, and they're going to just go try something else.
Give us a little information on temper tantrums. How do you deal with that?
Oh. Well, temper tantrums happen one of two ways. They either happen from a parent trying to force their will onto a child through authority or just control, or they happen because the parent just would refuse to meet their needs when they needed them. And so the way we actually handle it, one of the best ways is to, first of all, don't get in a power struggle with your child. I knew a wise preschool teacher from the Netherlands, and when I was a young mother, and she told me with my toddler, she said, no, don't make him share his toy. I said, what? She said, no, let him give it when he's ready. And she was so wise because, you see, at that age, she couldn't really understand why he needed to share. He wasn't to that moral phase yet. And when he gave it, it was completely different, and he accepted it and wanted to share. It wasn't because you have to share. So it wasn't a power struggle, you see. And then sharing became something he enjoyed doing.
Right.
And it was very wise of her. So you want the child to be able to make a decision. When a child makes their own decision and discoveries about things, they're more likely to own it and keep it. As far as tantrums go, as I said before, parents who will not meet their child's needs when they cry for attention create tantrum throwers. Once you've got one, the best way to deal with it is, you want to meet their needs, but not when they're throwing a tantrum. You want to ignore it. And if they will not, let's say if they're older, because teenagers will still throw tantrums. I've seen it a lot. And so you get a lot of these 2-year-old behaviors and 4-year-old behaviors and things like that. You'll see them way up into the teenage, even adult years for kids that have never gone through the phases well. And so if they're throwing a tantrum, you want to ignore it because they must not receive attention for that. Because otherwise, sometimes negative attention is better than none at all, right?
Right.
But if they're older, you want to remove yourself from the situation. You might actually have to leave, because once you remove the audience, it's not fun anymore. And that works with grown men that are throwing a tantrum, or women. Seriously, you just leave. So that's how you deal with tantrum.
Can you give us some pointers on discipline versus punishment?
Yes. Discipline is teaching, and punishment is focusing on the negative behavior.
That's brilliant. Few of us think of it like that.
Well, thank you. It's true, though. Punishment really does focus on the negative behavior. So, you are trying to get them to not repeat that behavior by inflicting something negative on them. But over and over, it's been proven that positive reinforcement of good behavior works much better. So when you catch them being good, when you're doing something right, and you reward that, you get more of what you hope for, you see, and it's more effective. The rewards are actually more effective.
So in a negative behavior, we should focus on the how rather than the what's going on. So to teach the child...
Yes, that's the inductive parenting, and it's absolutely true, because you want them to be able to think through the effects their actions have on everything before they do it, or what they've done already. And so, yes, you want to focus on the how. How did I do this rather than what did I do? And so that they can think, how can I do this differently?
In other words, get a better effect.
Mm-hmm. Get a better effect, because you're looking at what effect did it create. Exactly. And children can do that. You can teach them that.
That's absolutely amazing how much control we have if we just stop and think about it.
We have a profound effect on our children. Whether it's positive or negative is really up to us. We're going to have one, though.
So we just need to teach them the natural consequences of cause and effect, rather than pointing at good or bad or anger or you didn't mind me or you're not this or that. Just teach them the natural consequences of cause and effect and tell them to think about it.
Exactly, and natural consequences are so very, very important in teaching a child. When they realize it for themselves or experience it for themselves, they tend to own it. They can't blame anybody either except themselves if something goes wrong, because let's say, and I've done this many times with kids, I don't want to wear a coat. I don't need a coat. I say, okay, well, then don't wear one. And I've had parents looking like, what are you doing? They're going to be so cold. You need to run over to the school and bring them a coat. No, I don't. And then they're cold that day and they don't do it again. There's no argument. There's no power struggle. They decided they were cold and didn't bring it up again and brought their coat.
Cause and effect.
Yes, cause and effect. And it works wonderful.
So we should also encourage self-initiated activities and exploration of the environment, and kids with good self-confidence are not afraid to start wondering about how things work and study the environment or what happens, because if we teach them right, we're teaching them to study the cause and effect of their own behavior and ours from the beginning.
From the beginning. And that's what they're supposed to be doing with their little tiny baby. They're like, wow, okay, I can make a difference when I cry. I can be heard. I can communicate my needs. You see? I can trust myself because my communication is effective. And that kind of thing. And it does go all through life where we need to do that with our kids.
In reality, then, there is never a time to tell a child that they're stupid, no good, or bad, or put them down, or embarrass them ever, no matter what.
There is not. And I think shame on parents that do that. And sadly, I see it too much. And it's just like, what are you doing? Why? Why would you do that? It makes no sense at all. Is that supposed to make them behave better? Actually, what you're getting is a problem child, and you're going to pay. But the one that's going to pay the most is the child.
The authoritative parent then imagines that compliance is the foundation of character, which it is not.
Right.
It's the foundation of bondage.
Yes. It's exactly the opposite of what they hope for. They are creating the very thing they say they don't want. They're creating a child that doesn't mind. They're creating a child that doesn't care. They're creating a child that has no respect for them.
They're creating a child that dare not think for themselves as well.
Right.
So they have a rebellious child that doesn't think about cause and effect.
Yeah, that's
They're just
right.
angry.
And they don't respect authority. And, they mind because they might get in trouble. That's a very low moral level. If you look at Kohlberg's stages of moral development, minding because you're going to get in trouble is not really where you want a person to end up in life. That's more of a beginning phase. And really, that's a very low level of morality. You want someone to make right decisions on a higher level than that.
When parents are excessively permissive, what does that teach a child about themselves?
It teaches them that they don't matter. If you cared about them, you would protect them by setting rules that keep them safe. Why would you let them do that if you cared? They see that very clearly, and once again, they don't learn to respect authority.
That's a big problem. That's a national problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they don't care about others either. It goes right over to the other side where they aren't caring about other people. And they think they can do whatever they want to. So they often break rules and just trample all over people.
How do we get kids that respect authority and think independently?
Well, we have to have that balance. So when you have an authoritative parenting style, which is really what we've been talking about, then you have someone that realizes that things are interconnected, that you do have to have that balance. You've got to have those firm boundaries. You've got to have rules. You've got to be consistent. What's wrong today is still wrong tomorrow. So the child knows, and they're not blindsided, like, why I didn't even realize that was bad. But, you keep that consistency.
When punishment focuses on the negativity, there seems to be a lot of children that periodically will do something bad just for the attention. Are they not getting attention in life, and are they that desperate for attention?
Sure. If they can't get attention in a positive way, they will seek attention in a negative way. Absolutely. Whatever works.
If we only focused on the positive, that wouldn't work.
That's right, because you don't want to give them attention for negative behavior, and that's why you ignore a tantrum. And you want to do that when anyone is seeking attention for negative behavior. You don't want to give it to them. And sometimes it can be really hard because you're mad at them, but don't do it. Well, one thing that I'd like to mention about punishment is that too often it becomes an outlet for parents' anger and for them to relieve their bad feelings. And that's really not what we want to be doing. That's not teaching. That's something else.
That's venting.
And it's very harmful. When you do use any kind of a punishment like spanking or something like that, make sure you're in the right frame of mind. You want to be calm. You want to discipline in love. And you still want that child to know that you love them and that you want to handle them gently before you spank them.
I'd like to ask
you don't want to throw them around. And you know what I'm saying?
I want to ask you a question about spanking. How can we teach a child not to hit and then spank them?
Well, that's a good question, and that's why a lot of people are against spanking, because if it's okay to hit people to teach them a lesson, then that tends to go right over, because that's exactly how kids learn, right? We've been talking about that. They learn by what they see us do, and by how we react to them, they tend to react to others. I don't agree with spanking, but some people are going to spank.
Okay.
And if they must spank, they need to be calm. They should never spank when they're angry. And they need to handle that child gently. That child needs to understand
what's going on.
Well, the punishment needs to be deserved and understood, but it also, that child, no matter what, when a child is being disciplined, needs to know that you love them, still love them. Because it can be a fearsome thing to be grabbed by an adult and spanked.
Yes, it can.
And I don't think people realize the impact that has unless they've been there.
Does this affect their self-concept?
Yes, it definitely does. Because they have just lost all self-control. I mean, they have no control over what just happened. If they got spanked, they don't understand it. And especially little kids that are toddlers, they really shouldn't be spanked at all because their brain isn't there. They haven't gotten to morality yet. They do not understand. They cannot understand it yet. And so to spank them is not fair. Two aspects of self-confidence are a feeling of belonging and a feeling of self-worth. And so if a child doesn't feel like they belong in the family, they don't feel like they belong at school, it's especially important for a child to feel like they belong at home. Otherwise, where do they belong? And a feeling of worth, that they're worth something, that they matter. And that really should come from us, so that even if things aren't going well at school or whatever, they know that they're worth something and that you love them when they come home. And knowing those two things, that they belong and that they are of great value, is a determinant of behavior. Children act way different when they know that you care. So if you want a child that is going to be a good person and who is going to be obedient for real, though I know the others want their children to be obedient, then we really do need to give them a sense of belonging and a sense of worth.
Then when they're obedient, it's because it's a conviction not because of fear.
Yes, and I really believe that when someone does something out of fear rather than out of conviction, it's temporary. It's not going to last. And that's one of the reasons I don't always agree with just treating people with cognitive behavioral therapy, because I feel like we need to treat the heart. We need to, get to the bottom of it, get to the root. And when you treat the heart and why a person does what they do and things like that, then lasting change is more likely.
If they don't understand their emotions and their feelings and why they do what they do, they can't change it because they're not seeing it clearly.
Exactly.
So we need to teach them to recognize and respect their feelings.
Yes, and that is so important. I think that if we were to teach people how to recognize and accept their feelings, boy, there'd be a lot less people with mental health problems, because so much comes from that. So much depression and anxiety comes from that. So often I'll talk to a child and it's always I feel sad or I feel mad, and they don't know anything in between. They don't even know how to verbalize it. But if we teach children as they grow to recognize what they're feeling, I feel put down or I feel frustrated, whatever it is, because anger is really kind of some say a secondary emotion that masks everything else sometimes, and sadness can too. But so we really want to get to what they're really feeling. And if they're able to verbalize it, it can actually lift a great weight off of them. Also, we want to help them to get to the origin of why they feel that way. When does this start? How come you feel that way? To stop. To stop when you have a feeling and go, okay, where'd that come from? Because if we will recognize it, all of a sudden we feel happy. And we'll recognize it and go, wow, I'm really happy. I really liked that. Then we realize what makes us happy. And if we feel really concerned or something like that, we need to recognize that and say, wow, how come I feel that way? Oh, well, I should be concerned because something's going on, or I wouldn't feel concerned. Our feelings don't usually like us. They're usually right on. And they warn us against danger, and they tell us what's good. So we need to pay attention to that.
We should teach our children to pay attention and respect their feelings. Blind obedience doesn't allow feelings.
Exactly. It doesn't. One thing I want to say is sometimes we can misunderstand the situation and have a feeling, but then when we look back at the origin and we understand the situation, the feeling will change.
Yes.
So I do want to put that caveat in there, but yes, blind obedience is not a good thing. To nurture a good self-concept, we want to show our kids warmth and acceptance, and we want to respect who they are and not force ourselves on them. And we want to allow them to have opinions and to have feelings, and to show that that's a good thing. We want them to be able to express their feelings, but in an appropriate way, because everybody has feelings. So to pretend they don't exist doesn't work. It comes out in some other way. To teach them how to express those feelings appropriately, and that all will help them to have a much better self-concept, because every time they're able to be honest about their feelings, it's going to strengthen who they are and their values and their beliefs, because it solidifies their inner self.
That's very important.
It really is. And so there are some basic truths that do apply to all the age groups. Both parents and children of all ages, well, except infants, do better with friends, family, and community to have some kind of support in their lives. Men tend to do better with guy friends. Women do really good with family. To not feel like you're alone in parenting is really important for parents. And also, just to not feel alone, to feel like you're still a person while you're a parent is very important. But for children also, they need peer interaction and kids their own age to play with in order for them to do better. And so it's important for all age groups to have that, except, of course, like I said, infants, their interaction is basically one-on-one, mom and dad, and that's it. Also, we want to be very honest with our children and not pretend things aren't true that are true. Like, for instance, I saw a parent the other day, and the child hurt himself. And the parent said, "You're okay, get up, come on, you're fine." The child's crying, it hurts, it hurts. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt, you're fine. So the child is still crying. The parent says, "Come on, you're fine."
So the child has to deny what they feel,
Yes.
their reality.
But also what they're learning is that I can't really trust Mom to help me, to soothe me through this, or to tell me the truth. Because she's not being honest, it does hurt. You see, so Mom's being dishonest. So it's kind of affecting the trust between him and Mom now. And also the child is taught, they are taught to deny their feelings, but see, the feelings are really still there, but they must be bad because they still feel that way. So a lot of times what happens is you're setting them up for substance abuse when they get older. And also, because they're not allowed to have feelings, and feelings are bad, and pain is bad, and you're not supposed to have pain because you're a boy or whatever it is, then you deny, you try to stuff those feelings down and often forget even what the origins of the pain are, but it doesn't go away, so it crops up in other areas of your life, making you sick, or different things happen, and maybe you'll start having headaches, or who knows, and you don't know why. So we want to watch out for stuff like that.
So you can have a lot of psychosomatic illnesses from these things happening.
Yes. And it's also very important for children to watch their parents deal with their problems. A lot of parents think it's harmful to let the kids know you have any problems or anything like that at all, but it's not. Actually, to let your kids know, well, no, we can't spend money right now because we're short on money, or actually, I feel really sad because of blah, blah, blah right now. In watching you work through business transactions that are problems and interrelational problems and all different kinds of problems shows that child how to do it, how to work through their own problems, and that's how they learn. So if you never show them you have any problems, they don't get the benefit of learning from you how to deal with them.
And if you don't show them you have any feelings, they don't get the benefit of recognizing their own because you won't let them.
Yep, feelings aren't allowed. That's right. There's a 4-step process of teaching that was really great. It's so helpful. And that is to first demonstrate to the child what you want them to do. It sounds dumb, but it really is helpful. Okay, this is how you sweep the floor, right? Okay, now let's do it together. Especially for the little kid, maybe a floor is not the best example. Maybe folding clothes is better. But you do it together, and then the child does it while you watch. That's good. You're doing great, right? And then the child is able to go do it on their own. Well, a lot of times parents will expect a child to just go do something. Go clean your room. Well, sounds simple enough. You should know how to clean your room. Well, if that child hasn't been through that 4-step process, they really may not feel confident enough to go clean their room. It may be just an overwhelming thing that they just don't even know where to start. So as silly as it might sound, it really is very helpful if you go to their room and you start cleaning and say, this is how you do it. Oh, look for the most obvious stuff. Let's put that away first, or whatever. Show them how you clean the room. And then while you're cleaning the room, come on, we can do it together while you're still cleaning the room.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And the next time the child is able to do it on their own.
And they can do that with every problem.
And they feel confident to do it, instead of just assuming that they can just go do these things. Well, why not? What's the big problem? Well, you know what? We're adults. So, of course, we know how to clean our room. But a child may not. They may not know how to wash the dishes right, or just simple, all kinds of stuff. But that 4-step process is really helpful for teaching. We're in the last phase, because I have been going through the developmental phases as we go through this of childhood. In teenage years is when the child is solidifying their identity. And they either experience an identity of who they are, or they experience identity confusion. So all these years have built up to this. The way through an identity crisis is to allow them to decide their own values and to make decisions, which seems to be a very hard thing for many parents to do. It is like when you're watching that child learn how to dress themselves or feed themselves. It's just hard not to interfere and tell them what to do, or do it for them. Don't do it. Don't do it for them. Instead, you might help, but don't do it for them. And so you've got to let your teenager decide their own values, even if you don't agree with them. Maybe they don't want to go to your church, and that's really hard, but if they make the decision to go on their own, and it comes from their heart, well, then you've got a lasting decision. And they do have to decide for themselves what they're going to do. They have to decide their own values, and they have to learn to make their own decisions, to be prepared for life. I think it's really interesting that teenagers and toddlers have a lot in common. Have you ever noticed that? So I think it's kind of cute. They love to say no. They don't want to follow the rules. They want to do it their way. They don't want to go to bed on time, and they want your car keys. So a lot of the things, that 2-year-old is also in that phase where I need to do it on my own, and it's hard for parents to deal with. But if you don't let them do it, they're not going to learn to eat for themselves. And they're not going to learn to dress themselves. And your teenagers the same way, it's just scarier. And they're both, toddlers and teenagers, risk takers and do dangerous things. Both of them. It's scary. But it's time, it's time when they're a teenager to let them, and this time you can't watch every step they make, like you can with a toddler. You have to actually let them out of your sight. But it has to be done, and then they have to learn from their natural consequences, and then all you can do is be there to support them when things are hard, and give them your blessing in your time. And the blessing is huge, by the way. You've got to give them your blessing.
So the role of discipline is not to force our will upon them, but literally to help them develop their own abilities, their own talent, their own intuitiveness, their own trust in themselves, and to be unafraid to venture forward.
Yes, and then you're going to have someone that has some discipline.
That is discipline.
Yes.
Yes, it is. This has been very informative, and it's going to be a great deal of help to a lot of people. And Beverly, I'd like to thank you for your time and your wisdom for helping each and every one of us create better families, better relationships, and better kids. Because the children of today are the future of tomorrow.
They are.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.